Hello guys, I hope you're doing well. I have today my usual guest, Mr. Bachir, the General Manager of the English, the National English School, I'm sorry.
Hello.
Today we're going to talk mainly about language teaching. So in that regards, how do you see students progressing in terms of language learning?
Hi guys. I think there has been a lot of talk about what should be done in regards to learning language.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people would go with practice. Others might suggest that there are other strategies, other ways to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think today we want to talk about what's more important than that. That is the reason why people even want to learn a language. And I think it starts there.
Mm-hmm.
The way I see it is that people come to school and they pay a certain amount of money and they invest a certain amount of time and they expect the work, like most of the work, to be done by the teacher maybe or the school. And I think that's where the mistake is, because you are not paying for somebody else to do the job for you.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you have to do most of it.
Yes,
right?
of course.
And how to do most of it is explained by your guide, namely the teacher. That is, the teacher is right there to actually, facilitate the process. It gives you more access to certain stuff that are complicated for any basic learner to understand. But then all the work falls on the student, the learner.
Yes,
Right.
definitely.
And so, deciding to want to go learn, I think a person should really have a private conversation with themselves. That is, they have to weigh, the matter, the whole subject of learning. They need to understand why they want to do it. It's very, very important how they're going to do it and what it is that they're going to be learning. I mean, when I say what, I think it's what will be provided by the school that
Yes.
you go to. It doesn't matter which school you go to, as long as you understand what they're giving you. I think you're good to go.
Yes.
Coupled with you understanding why you want to do this, right?
Yes.
And then having or going through a certain process of understanding how you're going to do it. I think it sounds a little complicated, but then we're going to break it down into smaller pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the major part, 70%, 70% of the process of learning, I think, is predicated on you being ready to actually learn. That is, no one is ever that ready for it. So I think being ready has a lot of stuff in it, and a lot of stuff like being committed, being disciplined, being consistent, and all of these adjectives are very difficult to actually maintain on a regular basis. And so you might probably start strong in the beginning, you're pumped and you're all amped and everything, and you want to give your best to reach certain results. And then at some point it just becomes a load, it's too much.
A burden, yes.
It becomes a burden. It's taking longer now, you're not really where you thought you would be, and then
There are no check marks,
so
nothing.
it's the dip.
Yes.
And so it's more like business, you start at a certain point and then you experience a certain progress and then you plateau and then there's the dip, right? It's where you feel you're not making any progress, you feel like you've been learning the same things.
Yes.
And so the question that a person should ask themselves is, I just lost the thread of the question, but I think it's a very important one. Just one second.
Am I in the right sequence of progress, I believe?
It's not it. It's, I just lost it. I can't believe I did.
It's not a problem, alright. So, let's say, for example, I've always familiarized a teacher with a doctor or a therapist. They diagnose the problem and then they give you solutions. So, in that regards, do you think the teacher is the one responsible, one leading the ship of the learner from spot A to spot B, knowing that the student has to understand that this entire process is not dependent on the teacher or the school itself. So how do you see the role of the teacher leading a group of students from place A of zero ground to the 10th floor?
I think the major part that all teachers should understand is first to getting to know. They first have to get to know their students very well. You know, their capacities, what they want to have, where they want to go.
Yes.
Because it's not static. It's not standard.
Yes.
Not everyone wants the same.
There
thing.
is nothing typical.
Yes, and not everyone learns the same way. So teachers should really have an understanding, an individual understanding, that is, of each student separately.
Yes.
And then they try to create room for the student to actually inspect. Not only inspect, but search cues and clues.
Yes.
So that they can develop a certain logic. Because what is a language? A language is a tool we use to express ideas. So basically, everyone has an idea in a certain language, and so how are you going to get this student to understand? Yes, to apply, you know, their learned package. How are they going to get to use it? Because we can know things, you know, we can know a couple of words, we can know a couple of expressions, but how are we going to use these expressions if we don't know where to use them?
Yes.
Or in other words, why we use them. I think that's the logic behind learning. And so you're teaching logic, you're teaching
reasoning, yes, healthy reasoning.
Exactly. So what you should, I think, focus on the most is that the students should reason with the language, with the target language. And so that's why the teaching should be led in questions. You should never directly explain a rule or a word. So you should ask a question. So, for example, if the word on the board is, say, the nest, right?
Yes.
And so, how are you going to explain this? Are you going to tell them the nest is the place where actually birds live?
Yes.
Or are you going to tell them the nest? You give them a sentence, for example, you model. You say, well, today morning I woke up and I saw two birds building their nest. Right? So you start asking them by birds, so we know what birds are first. And then they're going to tell you most of them. Of course, if none of them answers, at least one of them is going to answer, and they're going to tell you, well, a bird is a bird. You know, they give you examples of this. And then you tell them, so where do birds live? Do they live in houses, or do they live in for example, I don't know, in trailers? Is it in plants? And then most of them are going to tell you, no, they live in the thing.
The small
thing. Like, okay, the thing. I mean, how do we call the thing for you? Like, what does the model say? The model sentence say? And then they're going to tell you, so okay, so you see the moment, you know, the okay, I get it. So you got to get them to say, oh, I get it, I see. So they have to reason. They have to think about it for a while and draw conclusions. And I think the teaching part is when you successfully get the student to draw the right conclusion about either a word or a language function, that is, or a grammar rule. They need to, your job is to drive them, to lead them to reach the moment. You know?
Yes. I think it gives them also a sense of accomplishment.
Yes, because they're doing it on their own.
Yes.
You know, they're not fully dependent on you.
Makes it fun as well.
Yes, that's why this is one of the methods that we call student-centered method. So it's all about the student doing all the job. That is. One more thing. I think I remember the question that I forgot earlier, and it's how can any person expect different results through or by or from doing the same thing? Like you cannot reach different results by applying the same strategy. And so you need to change strategy. So say if you start right here, and then your level gets better, and then now it seems that you just can't make it past this level. I think the strategy should change. You either should double your effort, or change the whole strategy. That is, start learning different stuff. And I think it's quite a load. It's quite a mission for a person to actually be always in profit, be always in progress. Because you got to maintain that, and to maintain that, there's a price to it. So there's either more time, more effort, and more thinking about the strategies that you can apply so your level can actually maintain growth, so you can grow exponentially. This is what I wanted to say. I think it's a key rule to understand. That is, strategies should change. So when you start the first week and the second week, say the first month, you apply certain strategies, and then the next month you need to change strategies so you can have more benefit.
Yes.
Right? And it keeps changing accordingly. That is, it's relative to your need. Your needs change every month, and the strategy will therefore have to change.
Yes, definitely.
That's the point.
Yes. I had a session yesterday I told you about education systems.
Yes.
And I had a strong opinion that a lot of people wanted to oppose, which is the fact that we spend a lot of time criticizing the system, the education system, the system of education, but then we don't criticize ourselves. Why are we doing that is going to encounter the system of learning? Are we producing something alternative to that's going to contribute to our own progress?
Yes.
And the system is, a lot of people don't understand that the system consists of a lot of elements. It consists of the students, it consists of the teachers, it consists of the approaches, it consists of the methods, and so on. But then the problem that I usually see is that there isn't something called perfect approach, teaching approach, or perfect teaching method. It's a compilation of a lot of things, but then the teacher needs to, he needs to collect all of these things that are going to create guidelines inside the class, and it's going to facilitate the teaching, the stream of teaching and the stream of students practicing as well. So it's all practical, and this is something, to be honest, I learned in the school, because I've been to, I have decent teaching experience. I've been to multiple schools. But the problem that I see, or the issue that captures my eyes, is that the teaching is really rigid. It's just based on the direct side towards the result, which needs to be immediate. If a student learns how to say hello, then this is the result. It's really short term. It has no vision that underlies within its own layers, you see. So this is what I want to talk about, is that students are not dealt with as psychological beings. They are dealt with as, as a client. And it's something very common. So how do you explain this, and how do the next avoid this trap entirely?
I think we have encountered. I believe there's this. I call it a secret, right?
Yes.
The secret is that it's caring, right? And it's caring about the students. I believe on multiple occasions we literally stop the class, start talking to the students about, them not making enough effort, or them not understanding why they're here.
Yes.
Most of the time I ask students the questions in here, and I'm like, hey, why are you guys here? And they're like, we're here to learn English. All right, you do understand that, and that's fine. But what are you doing so your learning is more optimal,
yes,
or is better, is more profitable every day? And they're like, well, we don't have the time for it. It's probably my job. Others will tell you it's their family. And I don't understand. I don't get it, really.
Yes.
People pay a lot of money to study. They give you a lot of their time, right? But then they don't regard it as a priority. And I think that's problem number one. You can't help someone who is not aware they should be helped, and who's not aware that what they're doing in here is an investment. They don't look at it like that. They regard school as a place they go to say, collect information, and then they go home.
Yes.
Right. And so I think when you create this connection with the student, where they understand there's an authority that's actually supervising not only are we supervising their presence, but we're also supervising their growth, whether they're practicing or not. We're constantly changing strategies to actually have more access to the students in their private lives and in here. Mm-hmm. And I think that will give us more chance, right, to approach to approach or say to reach maximum results. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of stuff it's a collection of things.
Yes,
To be aware of. But I think the most important is this, is creating that rapport with the student. Because once the students understand that you care about their growth more than they do, they start to give you back.
Yes.
You see? They feel like they owe you something. And I think it has worked a lot of times. I mean, you cannot just motivate people to study just by telling them they have to. You have to show them. You have to show them. You don't have to talk to them. You have to show them that progress is not an easy route. It's not an easy path, and that a lot should be invested in that process. And I think this is why we get a lot of people. I think this is why we receive a lot of people. And really, we have nothing to prove. I think that any teacher has nothing to prove.
Yes.
You know? And I think most of the teachers should progressively make themselves unimportant in class. They should show the students firsthand, they are important.
Yes. Yeah, because it's all about them.
Yes. And once the student understands that, they're going to ask themselves questions. Why does the teacher care so much? Why does the school care so much? And I
Yes.
don't. I mean, it's in my best interest to care about myself.
Yes.
And why shouldn't I? Why don't I do that? I mean, why aren't I really focused on myself progressing? If I'm paying regularly, if I'm here regularly, then why aren't I making the progress that I actually wanted
Yes.
to begin with? And so when you get, it's the same thing we use, the same strategy we use in teaching. You get someone to draw conclusions. And I think the more you get in touch with the students and you get them to draw conclusions about themselves, not being there all the way, for themselves, the more, I think, reaction you'll have. And then comes the part where the teaching is. And so you get exposed to a lot of methodologies, strategies, approaches in teaching, and you try to use the best, best out of them. And I think the best is the one that gets the students to interact the most. Interact using the target language naturally, instantly,
Yes.
So I think the learning and acquisition, both are two objectives. And
Definitely.
yes. So what is it that you're doing that's helping the students learn? Which is, you design certain activities, you design a certain curriculum. Not actually design it, but you just embrace a certain, or design. Yes, you take that approach. You try to facilitate the process, because the way we look at books and the way the student looks at books is not the same. A teacher should look at the book as a to-do, not a to-do list, but as missions. So every number of activities says something. A teacher sees that, a student does not.
Yes.
Right?
True.
Every teacher has the responsibility to actually understand the logic of the book. What is the book trying to say by this first page? So if I take a look at the page, I need to know what the objective is. What does the writer, the author of the book want me to teach today? Is it the actual language that's required to be written in there, or is it a whole
package?
A whole package, right? So the student does not see that, and it's our job to be the vehicle, to be the driver. We lead the class, so to drawing more conclusions. In other words, understand what we're teaching.
Yes. So, one more question, probably the last, since we are what is the ultimate advice you could give someone who's willing to start learning English?
I think anybody who wants to start learning should be responsible. I think they first have to, they owe it to themselves to have this conversation. Right, before I want to start, there are a lot of reasons why people can start learning. They can start because they need to learn the language for professional purposes, for personal purposes. But they need to understand that if they start something, they need to commit to it. And there's a lot of work that's going to be required. There's a lot of, effort that's going to be required. And once they understand all of this, I think they're ready to take on the challenge.
Yes.
Right? And then once they're here at the school, there's a whole squad, there's a whole team who's ready to actually help them out fulfill their goals and their objectives in the best way possible, that is. Right? And so, again, I will insist that the most important part about learning is to take responsibility. That is, if you're coming to school and you want to pay money and you want to give your time that you're never going to get back, probably you can get back the money, but you can never get back, yes, the time.
Yes.
The time is gone, growing older. If you give me 4 hours a week, then you're never going to get back the 4 hours. And so you have to make the best out of those 4 hours. Not only by being present and doing the best you can in the 4 hours, but I think every 4 hours require at least 16 other hours throughout the week to solidify what you guys want to achieve through the 4 hours. Now, I think this brings us to the end of our conversation, right? I don't know if it was enough for you guys to, I don't know, to
We'll have a second part, inshallah. So.
hopefully.
Or maybe you should send us questions. It's better.
Yeah,
send us questions.
Amazing.
Answer them directly.
Right.
Yeah.
If you guys feel we said something that was not accurate, please try to correct us. And if you feel like there's something we should learn about this topic, please share your views with us, especially the teachers out there that are listening to us. And one more tip I want to give is that you should. I think learning a language is a full-time job, so it has nothing to do with the hours you have at the school or the hours where you actually practice. So it's a 24-hour. It's a full job. It's a full-time job, and so you need to invest in it every single second, every single minute. I think you wake up in the morning, you try to speak a little bit of English. You take a lunch, you try to speak a little bit of English. You're talking to your friends, you try to use one word or two. So I think it should become part of your day. So it becomes a natural part of who you are, not who you are, but a natural part of what you actually do naturally throughout the day. Thank you very much for listening, guys, and we'll see you in part 2.
Yeah, inshallah. Last note, check our Instagram profile and our Facebook page, the Nest English School. Thank you.
Peace.